So we are growing the seeds of Hebrew roots. Our beliefs are rooted in Hebraic doctrines, the seeding of Abraham's faith. And so we know that Abraham, in looking at the scriptures, becomes the first Hebrew. And Hebrew means to cross over. We are crossing over, if you want to call it this way, this is the way I look at it. We are crossing over out of the system and into his wonderful light. And this wonderful light is the light of God's Word, and we see God's Word as the light unto our way and a lamp unto our paths. And so we have this great seeding of Abraham's faith that feeds our Hebraic roots. The Hebraic roots doctrine sprouts from the journey of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they caused the seed of Abraham's faith to grow into the Hebraic roots movement that we have today. And so the seeds of Hebrew roots also involves the law of Moses, the Mosaic law, the law of God, the law that was set down, the instructions that he set down, the commandments that he gave forth for us to live. We also have in the seeds of Hebrew roots the words of the prophets, the teachings of Jesus, of the disciples, and the Apostle Paul. And we see in the seeds of Hebrew roots is we have the Bible as a whole. We take the Old and New Testament, or the Old and New Covenants, and we use them as one text. We do not separate them into two books, but we see them as one book that is applicable. The whole book from Genesis to Revelation is applicable for the whole thing. So in Hebrew, we have this word called Ibri. Ibri means Hebrew, and from that we get Ibrim, or Hebraic, to be like a Hebrew. So just like in Christianity, to be a Christian means to be Christ-like. To be a Hebrew is to be like a Hebrew. So Hebrew, like I said before, means to cross over. Abraham crossed over actually from paganism over into being Hebraic. And so he was the father of our faith to institute and to usher in what it is to be a Hebrew. It is this journey that gave rise to our Hebraic roots. Abraham planted the seeds of our faith. So Hebrew is also synonymous to being an Israelite. Well, those that are of the followings of Israel. So those in churchianity would have us to believe that the church has replaced Israel, and that is not true. In fact, later on we'll be getting into some scriptures and some teachings about how we are grafted into Israel, that the church doesn't replace Israel, but we are all Israel. So to be in Hebrew roots means we have to traverse the region beyond. And that region beyond would be those ideas that a lot of us may find foreign, may find new. This is the region that is being explored by Torah explorers, the region that is being explored by people who have multiple teachings out there exposing the darkness of Hebrew roots. But what they're really doing is they're exposing the truth that we have ventured on. They're exposing this way of life that we have all ventured on, the way of truth in the Bible. So to be Hebrew, as I said, is to leave the world system behind, the paganism behind, the system. We're leaving the matrix. We're leaving the workings of the world behind. We're leaving behind the mechanics of man's doctrine, and we're crossing over. So we're crossing over, we're being Hebraic. So in looking at our Hebrew roots of faith, we have to always look backwards. We have to look backwards to the beginning of where our Hebrew roots sprung from. And so we know that in Hebrew roots, we're following after the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And so God is an English word for Elohim. So in Hebraic roots, we call God El or Elohim, knowing that our forefathers, the fathers of our faith, the people who laid out the foundations of our faith are Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But remember, they had their foundations in God. God was laying out his foundations through them. So we're not following Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as in men, but we're following them in their seeds of faith that they have planted. So Abraham is the patriarch or the father of our faith. The seeds of Hebrew roots begins with Abraham's journey, who was called out of the world. So if we go back to Genesis and we look at how the seeds of faith started with Abraham, we see that God calls Abraham out to go to a place where he will be showed. And so when we're going in Hebrew roots, we are going on an Abrahamic journey as well, because God is telling us, follow me and I will take you to a place that I will show you. So that is the essence, that is the face of faith that we have, is that faith compels us to go somewhere that we don't know exactly where we're going, but we go little by little, part by part, going by his word, in faith that he will show us where this journey is taking us. So we are, in a sense, we are going on an Abrahamic journey as well. As Abraham was called out of his system, we're called out of our system. So in the Hebrew roots of faith, we have to ask the question, what defines your faith? We have already identified that religion is a particular system of beliefs and worship. So what in your religion, as you're watching this, what is your religion? What is your system of beliefs? What is your system of worship? The Bible and God are traditional doctrines of the church and man, but man has added just a little bit more, just enough to get him into his own dogmas and his own doctrines. So while the church has engrossed itself in the Bible and has engrossed itself in God and traditional doctrines that are found in the Bible, there's just enough of man's own doctrines that cause him to adopt this new way that is veered away from the ancient paths. And that's what Hebrew roots does. And I know I've said this many times before, but I can't stress it enough to say that this is what Hebrew roots is that we are advocating a return back to the ancient paths. So can we find scriptural basis for the dogma that we have? So whatever your beliefs are, we must be able to find some Bible-based reasoning behind them. Do we have the courage to leave the system and get back to the Bible? So let's find out what it is to be Hebraic. Galatians 3:29 says, if you be Christ's, then you are Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise. So if you really want to walk in this faith of God in your life, then you must admit that you have to be of Abraham's seed. Because in Galatians 3:29 says that if we are of Messiah or of Christ, then we are also of Abraham's seed. And we already have identified that Abraham's seed was Hebraic. So this is the seed that we must plant in our lives. This is the seed that we must harvest in our lives, is being Hebraic, because if we are in Messiah, we are also Abraham's seed. And remember, Abraham's seed is Israel. So for us to say that some of the instructions that God gave was just for Israel, we are Israel too. Those ideas, those commandments, that life, those ideas, those theologies, or theology, if you will, must apply to us, because if it applied to the Israelites, it applies to us because we're Abraham's seed. Galatians 3:7 says, "Know ye therefore they that which are of faith, the same are the children of Abraham." The seeds of Hebrew roots are found in Abraham's faith. If we're of the faith in Messiah, Messianic, we are also of Abraham's faith and walk. Abraham's covenant extends to us as his seed. So we have these Hebrew roots that are founded in Abraham's faith. We don't have a root that is rooted in the church. There is no church faith. There is Abraham's faith that he got from God. Hebrews 11:8 says, "By faith, when he was called to go out into a place which he should, after receive for inheritance, obeyed, and he went out not knowing whither he went." Is that not the definition of faith? Is going a place that he could not see, a place that he could not know, the place he could not understand at that time. So that's what it means to be a Hebraic, is to walk in faith. So being Hebraic, believers are called. Believers are called to faith. Believers obey in faith. Believers journey in faith. And believers go. Believers are like Abraham. So in Hebrew roots, here are our core beliefs. Hebrew roots is the revival that is returning believers back to a Torah observant life. It is about the Bible life and not the Jewish life. Hebrew root congregants are neither Jewish or Christian. And the main focus is Yeshua and Yahweh. Or if we want to go in English terms, the main focus is God and Jesus. But remember that God and Jesus are the same. The main focus is about him. This whole word is about him. Our whole life is about him. Part of the Hebrew root core beliefs is that we observe the Sabbath and not Sunday as the holy day. We also believe that Jesus did not bring an end to the law of Moses. In Hebrew roots, we believe in keeping the feast days in the Bible, and we don't keep the man-made holidays. So there's a difference between holy days and holidays. Holy days are the days of God that he set up with his 7 feasts and his weekly feast of Sabbath. And the holidays are the days instituted by man in his attempts to worship God. And these days would be Christmas and Easter. Other holidays have been instituted but don't necessarily are attempting to worship God, would be New Year's Day, Valentine's Day, and other things. And so in Hebrew roots, we also eat by the biblical dietary instructions. That word can also be called kosher, but for the sake of this discussion, we're going to call it biblically mandated dietary laws that God has commanded us to do. So in Hebrew roots, we also study and read both the Old and New Testaments, knowing that the Word of God has not changed. It is his enduring Word. In Hebrew roots, we wear these things called tzitzis, which are also called fringes or tassels in some biblical translations. Some men choose to wear kippahs and talits. Hebrew roots and Messianic congregations, there can be very conservative, or they can be very liberal, and so the conservativeness and the liberalness can be hinged on this wearings of kippahs and talits. And in the Hebrew roots, we also study the Old and New Testaments of the Bible. So in Hebrew roots, we have this thing called the Torah portion, where we throughout the weeks of the year, we divide the study of the first five books of the Bible, which is called the Torah. We divide that by the weeks and studying a selected portion of the Torah, mixed in with the prophet writings and the New Testament. Hebrew roots lives by a Hebraic lifestyle and perspective, and Hebrew roots advocates that instead of being the church, we are the assembly of Israel and the bride of Messiah. Salvation comes through Messiah is a very core value in Hebrew roots. Salvation comes through Messiah, Yeshua. The Torah is to be lived out even as believers in Messiah, Yeshua. So we in Hebrew roots don't believe at all that the commandments have been done away with, but the commandments are a good thing. They are instructions for us to live by. Have you ever heard the acronym BIBLE means basic instructions before leaving earth? Well, in Hebrew roots, we believe that too. We believe that the instructions are a good thing because God cares about us. He built us, He loves us, and He gave us the instruction manual for us how to live. So in Hebrew roots, we embrace the Hebrew language and perspectives. So we understand in living in America in our Greek Western culture that we have these ideas that really prevent us from understanding God's Word. So in Hebrew roots, we tend to want to transform our English Western mind thinking into Hebraic thinking. And so with that, we study the Hebrew language so we can have a better understanding of what God's Word really says. So none of us can really believe that our English Bibles is what was really written originally, right? So English is a translation from a translation from a translation from a translation which came from Hebrew, or its sister language, Aramaic. So to really understand what the original intent meaning is, we devote our time to understanding the language of Hebrew. Some of us are more advanced than others, but we're all on this journey, right, at different levels and at different speeds. So we devote our times to learning the Hebrew language. So in Hebrew roots, we adhere to Yeshua as the Son of God and Yahweh as God Himself, but we understand that Yeshua and God are the same person, okay? Torah is followed for God's instructions for us, just as Jesus followed and kept Torah, just as the disciples followed and kept Torah, just as the apostles followed and kept Torah, just as Paul followed and kept Torah, just as the early assembly of believers followed and kept Torah. We believe that we would like to do the same. So in Hebrew roots, we seek after a Jewish or Hebraic culture, but not Judaism in its religion. And so that may be a little confusing when I say we seek after Jewish culture, but not Judaism. We understand that Jewish culture has its belief in Hebrew culture, and so they have a lot of culture that we want to study, and some of it we may want to emulate, but we don't want to embrace the Judaism religion because remember, Judaism expels Jesus from its theology. Some Hebraic groups are spirit-filled and some are not. Just like in Christianity, there are a wide variety of Christian denominations that are not spirit-filled, that do not embrace being baptized in the Holy Spirit. Some are charismatic, some are Pentecostal that embrace the Spirit-filled life. And it's the same in Hebraic-based groups. Some of us are Spirit-filled and some of us are not. And so in Hebrew roots core beliefs, going back to Yeshua as the Son of God and Yahweh as God, we believe that God is one. The Hebrew word there is echad. And so we don't follow this idea of the Trinity. Now, a lot of people out there who are teaching against Hebrew roots, this will be one of their speaking points, is that the Hebrew roots doesn't believe in the Trinity, and they will say that in a way to make us look like that we don't believe that Jesus and God are the same. But when we say that we don't follow the Trinity, we're following the fact that God and Jesus and the Holy Spirit are all the same God. They're not divided into three essences. And the best way that we describe that is that in God and Jesus and the Holy Spirit being one, is we liken that as a man. A man can be a husband, a son, and a father all at the same time, but to have different roles. That is the Akkad of God, and that is not the Trinity. So in Hebrew Roots, we don't preach the Trinity in our core values. So in Hebrew Roots, we sum it up as a return back to the ancient paths that return us back to walk in the truth of God's holy word, which will cause us to be holy, which means to be separated. And we embrace being Hebraic, which means we cross over. And we're crossing over out of the system and into God's ways. So we illustrate this with Scripture. Romans 12:2, and it says, "Be not conformed to this world," or we could replace that with system, "but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God." So in Hebraic roots, that is what we are thirsting after. That is what we're going after. Is we're looking for that good, acceptable, and perfect will of God for our lives. And we're looking to be transformed. And so we are getting away from the mainstream ideas of religion. We are seeking not to be conformed to their ways. We're seeking to get off the broad path and to get onto the narrow path. So we're actually invoking this first part of Romans 12:2 that says, "Be not conformed to this world." In Jeremiah 6:16, it says, "Thus saith the Lord, stand ye in the ways, and see, and ask for the old paths. Where is the good way? And walk therein, and you shall find rest for your souls. But they said, we will not walk therein." That last part of the scripture signifies rebellion. We don't want to be part of the rebellious spirit, but we want to be part of the spirit that surrenders itself to the will of God. So in Hebrew Roots, we have a revival going on. More and more people around the world are leaving churches and getting back to the truth of God's word, getting back to his doctrines and forsaking the doctrines of man. So this revival is going on. And this revival is not like the tent revivals of old. This is a revival that's causing us to return back to the old ways. And it's been said often before, how can you be right and everyone else is wrong? But remembering the verse that we've said many times before, Matthew 7:13, "Enter ye at the strait gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction, and many there be which go in thereat." And so there is this broad path that we want to get off of. Jesus came, even in Jesus' ministry, he came and was seen as the person that was probably the black sheep among the white sheep. He is the person that's probably been thought of as a rebel, as a person that came and turned upside down the whole world. The world has never been the same ever since Jesus walked the earth, that he came in his carnate form. He came and he turned the world upside down so much that he brought this great revival. And so this Hebrew Roots revival can never do the same thing that Jesus did, but this revival of Hebrew Roots is causing people to reboot the system, to reboot their faith that they have, and to examine the roots of their faith that they have. Most of those in Hebrew Roots came out of the church system. So when you're in Hebrew Root gatherings, you'll talk often with people that have come out of a variety of church backgrounds. Some have come out of mainstream, some have come out of Catholicism, some have come out of Protestantism, some have come out of charismatic, some have come out of Baptist, some have come out of non-denominational, but we've all come out of the church system. While there are a reserved amount that have come out of Judaism as well. But we have all come out of some kind of system. In Psalms 80:18, it says, "And we shall and we shall not backslide from you. Revive us, and let us call upon your name. So you want to know how to have revival in your life? Call upon his name. Ask his Holy Spirit to reveal the truth to you, and he will not let you down. Hebrew roots suggests that the original path was not changed by God. So we see a lot of religions out there that have suggested that there is a new path, there's a new way, and that there are lots of different ways to God. Jesus said that he is the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father but by him. So when we want to get to the truth of our faith, of our religion, we have to come through Jesus. He is the door. He is the door. He is the way to God, and he is the original path. Jesus is not this new figure that showed up in the earth and changed the world. He was with the Father from the creation of the earth, and he instituted the original path all the way from Genesis all the way to Revelations. So Hebrew roots is not this new way, but it is the original way. This has been the way for over 3,500 years because God has not changed. The way was also referred to those people who followed after Jesus. And so the way lived and walked by the doctrines of Jesus, by his words, and by the way that the first century believers believed, and by their faith. So the way of Jesus and the disciples and the early assembly is the way that we want to walk. So what does following Jesus who followed the Torah look like? So that is answered very simply. Just read your Bible. Read your Bible and see how he lived. See what he preached. See what he taught. See what the disciples and the apostles and the first assembly of believers, what did their faith look like? Read the Gospels. Read the book of Acts. Read all of the letters, and you'll see what does following Jesus and the Torah look like. And you will find that they followed the Torah. And if you really think about it, they didn't follow the New Testament for quite some time because they were, for two reasons. One, that Paul, the writer of the majority of the New Testament, and Peter, and all the other apostles and disciples, they were all walking in Torah because they originally were they were Hebraic followers of Torah, and they walked in the ways of the Torah, and so they didn't have the New Testament for quite some time. All they had was the Torah. So we see in Hebrew roots that the New Testament is really commentary of the Torah, except for the Gospels. The four Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are witnesses that were written about what Jesus did while he was on the earth. And then we have Revelations, which is a book of prophecy. Except for those books, the rest of the writings are commentary on the Torah. So these early believers didn't have the New Testament because they were living the New Testament.